Hey there, I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where every conversation is built around one idea that your money is a tool to design and live your version of a rich life. Now, a lot of high performers are quietly sitting on two versions of this tension. At work, they're leading a team that's outgrown how it used to operate. The personalities that tolerated each other, the conversations that now happen in the hallway instead of the room. And then personally, they're circling a bigger leap of their own, waiting for the right time that the data never quite delivers. If either one of those is you, this one's for you. Today, I'm joined by Rachel Wexler, a leadership development partner who spent 25 years running product and strategy in the corporate world before making the jump to build her own practice. She helps leadership teams that have outgrown the way they work together to unlock the next level of performance their business now demands. We get into how to spot a team that's quietly fracturing, how to build real healthy conflict instead of just talking about it, and what it actually takes to face the fear you can't analyze your way out of to go out on your own. Before we get into it, make sure that you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if the show's adding value, I'd really appreciate a quick review. Thanks and enjoy the episode.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. All right, Rachel, thanks for joining Making Sense of Your Money. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thanks, Dan, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. You and I got connected a while back on LinkedIn. I've really enjoyed your content and the work that you do. So let's start there. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you have an interesting one and kind of what's led you to form the business that you operate in today.
Sure. So I would say I'm in a new phase of my career, which is, I know, a phase that you talk a lot about with your clients, right? I spent the first 25 years of my career in the corporate world, starting in a consulting capacity, and then really largely after business school, running product and strategy teams that happen to be in the education space, in various sectors of the education space. And from probably my first case as a fresh undergrad when I was at Parthenon, it was clear that I was a good analyst. I could do the math, I could derive the thinking, but my skills were really in the client-facing sense. And so I would say I was probably the one in my class who was always on a plane or got to see a lot of the world, actually, which was always fun for someone in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And really got to learn about people in a whole different light. And so that was the thread that I would say I really leveraged in leading product, because I was always at the center, or I served in a chief of staff role for a number of companies. I worked in leading the preeminent strategic initiative of of wherever I was, and I was always at the center where I would work with different people. I found ways to get various colleagues and functions and levels of seniority working together in service of a goal, and I loved that part of the job. And so it was about 10 years ago, and really on a whim and more just seeking more experiences that were unique, or I don't want to say unique, but of greatest interest to me. And that's where I ended up studying executive coaching. And for me, that was this great nexus of business and people, which was my passion, business being the context, and really lifelong learning, which was the subject matter of a lot of my work, and that all came together. And so I would love to say I was smart enough to go out on my own at that moment. But probably like many of your clients, I was scared. Was it the right time? Did I have enough money saved? How is this going to work? All of the things. And so it probably took another 8 to 10 years before I actually made the leap. But those skills that were what powered me and differentiated me in my early 20s, and then helped me be successful in the corporate world, are really what I'm living into on a day-to-day basis now.
All right, I love it. All right, so we're going to unpack a couple of things here. I definitely want to hear about the experience of what gave you sort of the strength and the courage and the confidence to make the move. We'll come back to that. Let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with executive leaders today. Tell us a little bit about who you serve and the intended outcomes of your services.
Sure. So I really describe myself as a leadership development partner. I work with teams. I really partner with teams. And I use the word partner very intentionally because, I could say I'm a consultant. That makes me sound really hands off. If I say I'm a coach, coaching is one of the things that I do. But really as a partner, I am with the leadership team. I recognize I am not on their team, but I am hands-on and I'm very involved. And I really focus, what I say is I focus on teams that have outgrown the ways they work together to unlock a new level of performance that their businesses now demand. And so that's probably a funny way of saying, for most of my clients, they're growing.
Yeah.
I think, we're always in transition, whether it's in our personal lives or whether it's, businesses, everyone's in transition. And what worked yesterday or last year isn't always what's going to work moving forward. And oftentimes it's the personalities that have tolerated each other for some bit of time, or a leader's approach that the team has worked with for a while.
Yeah.
And it just isn't it's just not hitting the right note. Or a team may know each other on a superficial level, but hasn't really thought about the best ways to work together. And that's really where I become an objective set of eyes and ears informed by experience and pattern recognition, and then a partner to really help individuals and teams grow through those inflection points.
Yeah, I love your framework of helping teams who have outgrown how they work together. Because the work that I did for a portion of my career in the corporate world, I've seen it, and I'm in leading a growing business now. I see it in different ways. So many of our listeners are team leaders and lead different functions at varying degrees. Give us some ways that folks can identify if their team may have outgrown how they work together.
So it's a great question. I think, sometimes it's really questioning when there's silence, right? Or when you can see, so the first thing is really good leaders are great listeners.
Mhm.
And that's just not hearing what somebody says. It's watching their body language. So like watching when people tense up. It's watching when people start looking at each other across the table. It's watching when two people pick up their phones or, get on Slack.
Sure.
And that there's another conversation happening. And it's also in listening to the tone. And so really good leaders start by having one-on-one relationships, strong one-on-one relationships. And they get to know their people because they know how to help the individual connect their contribution to what's happening in the company, whether it's their contribution or their team's contribution. They also understand what makes them tick and how to really get the most out of them. And they understand their strengths, because when someone is under stress or tension, their greatest strengths become exaggerated and really become their Achilles heel. So I think part of it is making sure that when you're in the room with your team, that people are being authentic to the way that they are in a one-on-one. And when they're not in that mode, it's time to get curious. It's time to see what is going on. I think there's also understanding when the conversation is happening in the room, and when you start to see that the conversation's actually happening in the hallway, in the corners,
Right.
After work. And that's never helpful, because the best teams operate on the basis of trust. They are ready to have healthy conflict and dialogue.
Yeah.
And when you see that that is not happening, it's time to get curious and figure out, how do you bring everybody back together? How do you get everybody contributing to the group conversation as opposed to one-on-ones, right?
Healthy conflict is such an interesting concept to me. I want to unpack that one a little bit more, because I rarely find an organization that doesn't say something to the effect of, you know, we embrace healthy conflict, or we want healthy conflict. But I also rarely see ones that actually live that, right? So what is your thoughts on that? How do you get folks to actually be comfortable with healthy conflict? Because, it's so the concept is simple in how it can improve your organization, but the actual execution and putting into practice is far from it.
Yeah. And it's not easy. And not only is it hard to develop, but it takes intentional practice, because those are muscles that, humans are wired for safety and security. They're not wired to push each other to the point that they make the other person uncomfortable.
Right.
And so, and we also, let's face it, we live in a world where we've lost the art of dialogue, whether it is politically, and I don't need to go there to make a political statement, but I think it shows that when we look at the best moments in this country, it's when two or more sides can find a place of compromise. And we've pushed ourselves so far that we're not having the conversations that we need to have. Social media, technology puts us through an algorithm and then puts us with people who are like us, as opposed to getting conversations able to happen. When we think about our kids, that people often say, like, gosh, our kids are getting soft because, anytime you're about to make someone uncomfortable, you stop. And I'm not saying that we should be bullies or anything else, but it's about creating environments where people do feel like they can trust each other, where they can assume positive intent, and where the leader, who really, let's say, like, the leader sets the tone, the leader is open to feedback, to questioning, to being vulnerable, right? Because if the leader exemplifies that behavior, then it almost gives everyone else permission. And so it allows people to share what, we're really good at being on the surface and talking about the logistics and what has to happen. We're not always good at getting under the surface. And that's not always like about your feelings and those kinds of things. Though I love when people talk about their feelings, because I learn a lot about them, but I know that that's not a happy place for everyone. It's also about being in the throes of a project and doing, let's say, a pre-mortem, where you say, how can this fail? Let's come up with all of the reasons that this can fail. And so sometimes it can be embedded in the work itself, but it's getting to that next level. It's not just what someone's asking for, but it's getting to that root cause. And that's where it's helpful to get teams aligned.
I love that concept of where could it fail. I have a concept that I'll utilize with the teams that I've led over the course of my career, where if everyone in the room is aligned on a certain decision, we'll oftentimes say, somebody play the other side. Just play the other side, even if you don't agree with it, right? Just play the other side, because we all maybe think a similar way or have similar experiences being backed by the business, we may not have thought about the other side. And then the other concept that's always worked really well for me is, and this is a tough one, but I'm curious your thoughts on it. I think, we're all naturally wired to feel slighted if our idea doesn't get chosen, or if the suggestion we give doesn't get implemented. So I like this concept. I think I took it from Traction, but I'm not 100% sure. And the idea is disagree and commit, right? So, like, you have a discussion. At the end of the day, somebody needs to be responsible for making a decision, and then we all need to move forward. And we may disagree with it, but we need to commit to it. So we're not saying, we walked out of there and saying, oh, the boss chose bad idea, not my idea. So I'm going to be down on it. I'm not going to support it. I'm going to, maybe secretly try to hope or do whatever I can so that it doesn't work out, right? The disagree and commit is an interesting concept. So your thoughts on that?
I like that. I guess I would add to it, which may end up being a variant, but people also like to feel people are seeking leadership.
Right.
And in many cases, we find that there's a void of leadership. There may be somebody who is managing a project or managing an initiative or an organization or things like that. But true leaders are few and far between. And I think that the idea of this leader that inspires and everyone looks up to is more of an ideal than we actually give it credit for.
Sure.
And what we expect of leaders today is so great that I don't know if any individuals could live up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in this disagree and commit, I would say the first thing is you don't have to agree. Like, we're not always looking for unanimity, but it's helpful to build towards consensus or understand if we don't have consensus, who is in and who isn't. And so understand where people are on the spectrum. In essence, like, allow people to be heard so that you are bringing together various perspectives. And that's important, because even if the leader says, like, we are still going to go ahead with this, they understand what are the other perspectives, what might they not be seeing, because rarely does somebody start with an idea and vet it with a number of other people, different functions, different perspectives, different backgrounds, whatever, and not come up with some improvement on the original concept that isn't better. So I'd say that. The other is, you don't always have to agree, and you actually don't even need to like each other, but you do need to respect each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think seeing where there is merit in an idea or merit in what someone wants to, what the outcome is, the desired outcome is. I think there has to be some level of respect. And then, yes, if people have been heard and if they can at least respect the idea and where everybody is, then disagree. That's healthy, and commit and get to a place where people assume good intent of each other.
Got it. All right. Well said. All right. We're going to switch gears a little bit. I want to come back to a point that you made earlier, which was sort of your journey from going from the corporate role into running your own practice. Tell us your thoughts around that. How did it evolve over time? What did you want to accomplish? And then ultimately, how have you found that transition to be for your career and your life?
That's a lot of questions. Let me, I've been giving this idea a lot of thought. And one of the things that I went back to just in another phase of my life, I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, which was 20 years ago, and I remember saying, like, is this the right time? Right. And a good friend from business school said to me, she said, you know what someone just told me? There's never going to be a right time. You're never going to have amassed all the experiences you want to. You won't have traveled to all the places you want to. You won't have all the money in the bank. Like, there's never going to be a perfect time. And we can be as analytical as we want to be. And, you especially live in a very data-based world. We all live in a very data-centric world.
Yeah.
We gather ideas with data. And at the end of the day, we use our heart when we're making decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's art and science to all of this, whether it's science or investments or anything else. And so I would say I had thought about this. I would never be able to talk myself into leaving. And I had a lot of good support around me, and, from colleagues to friends to family, everyone was excited about me going out on my own. And honestly, I had a few stops and starts along the way, and it became a milestone birthday that finally was the piece that got me to make the move. So I'm probably not a great example, or I am the average example where I couldn't really rationalize it on my own. And finally I said, I don't want to live with regret and I better do it before I turn 50. And I think that was really what catalyzed it for me, in knowing that there was absolutely no way I was going to erase the risks. There were things I could do to mitigate them.
Sure.
But at some point, I had to face the fear that I couldn't analyze anymore. And so that's what I did. What did I set out to do? Like your clients, I sat at the table with wonderful colleagues, really thoughtful people, really good people. And the reality is, and many of whom I am still in close touch with, but the reality is, when there's pressure and everybody is working towards a goal, even if it's a common goal, there's tension. Just like our greatest strengths become the elephant in the room. Oftentimes, people are afraid to say the hard things. We can go on and on, all the negative things. And it is hard to fix that always from within. And whether it was like our partners who I saw the same issues with, whether it was clients, whether it was organizations I was involved with in a nonprofit board sense, the personalities transcend the industry, and human nature and and interpersonal dynamics follow very similar patterns regardless of where you are. And I have, and I talked about the coaching program that I did, I have the context of how the business world works and how humans behave on a team. And it's really whether it's an athletic team or a board or an operating organization, there's just certain dynamics. And sometimes many people don't have shared language. They don't trust themselves to ask the hard questions or of themselves or of others. And I was the person in many places I worked where people would say, if you're having an issue on your team or someone isn't really, they don't seem consistent with how they normally are, send them to Rachel. Yeah. And I oftentimes could tap into what was going on. And so it became this pursuit of mine. And I am still working on what that looks like, how that evidences itself. And there's nothing that gives me greater energy than sitting with a room of people who on the surface seem to be getting along, and to get them to that next level of trust and partnership and collaboration and perceived ability, because there's always the ability there, but to take a risk. And so those are the conversations that I'm having with my clients on a regular basis, and helping them develop the skills and the courage to create those spaces where they can do those same things.
Amazing. Very well said. All right. So thank you for sharing sort of your journey to get here. What's it been like for you from a personal and a professional perspective? What's that transition been like? And for someone that maybe is considering it, give your experiences.
It is. So I always tell my kids, do something every day that scares you. And 2 years into this journey, I am making up for lost time. And so it is, I would say I've never been happier in my work. I am always thinking about it, not in a way that drains me, but in a way that I am putting ideas together. I'm finding those threads. I love using analogies with my clients. So I love seeing, whether it's at a concert and you're seeing what happens, or I'm on the tennis court and I'm watching partnerships interact, right? I'm constantly mining those connections that I can bring to my clients in a way to take some of these really abstract concepts and make them very tangible, measurable as well.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm always thinking about work. And I would say it is, so those are the good things.
Mhm.
And I would say it's really hard. It doesn't matter so much what you did in the past. All of a sudden, your past is what gives you credibility,
Right.
and it gives you some relatability. And all of a sudden, you know, the line in the sand has been redrawn, and you have to communicate your own value proposition. And to someone who has never been has never been a salesperson, right? I mean, at a certain point in an organization, everybody is selling,
Right.
but usually those people have been pre-qualified and you come in as an expert, right? It is different when you are working the top of the funnel, right through the bottom. And I think that's where some of the greatest learnings have come from. And I would say I am still learning every single day. And, you build a system and you think you have everything under control. And then you introduce a new level of, a new layer of complexity, or things get a little bit bigger, and the system that worked before no longer works. And so, I never liked the term, when you're the waiter, the chef, the dishwasher, the host, all those things, but you are kind of in that role and figuring out what needs to be done, and then how to bring in people who can help you, not just to advise you, but also who can help, provide some leverage as well.
I love it. I love it. That's great experience and great thoughts on the transition. Today, our motto, our mission, our purpose is to help our clients design and live your version of a rich life. What does your version of a rich life look like today, Rachel?
So I like to have my cake and eat it too. My rich life would have many dimensions. I like to think of it maybe as a jewel with many facets. So I would say I love a good challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so that intellectual capacity, and that ability to really think through something strategically. I also like getting my hands dirty, which is why I say I'm more of a partner to my clients. So I like being able to get into the work, and I like stepping back and thinking about the work and how do I talk about the work, which I would say is on the list of things that are sometimes a challenge. So I would say having something on the work front that meets all of those needs, and that I feel like I'm contributing, right? At the end of the day, I love when I can provide value and where you can see that light bulb go off. I love that. And my work is very important to me. I have always defined myself as a professional and as a leader. So that is not changing at all. But my life is also full. And so a rich life is still really having meaningful connections with my family. And that means that I am current on what they are doing and how they're feeling about things and what are their challenges, right? It's not just flying in and out, but it's having some of that meaningful time. It is also having a space for myself, where I can recharge, where I can, light up in ways that, you know, whether it's endorphins and exercise, or whether it's doing something creative, which is I see as cooking, or doing something novel, like in the form of travel.
Sure.
So having some piece of that. And then I think also giving back to, hold on. It's also having friends and, beyond family, right? Because our friends are the family that we choose, and we can be blessed with our families, but it's really important to have those connections. It's being part of a community, and it's also leading in every community that we're in, and giving back. And so a rich life somehow makes space for all those things, which I think is why I'm always trying to figure out how I can sleep more.
I love it. I love it. All right, great. Perfect transition now. We're going to enter the lightning round. All right. So I know you know what the lightning round is, but just give us the first thought that comes to your mind. You ready?
Okay. Okay.
All right. One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
So I want to tell you that it is some version of grilled fish and vegetables
Okay.
and, with fresh herbs. But I will tell you that if I could eat pizza and ice cream every day for the rest of my life, I would do that.
Okay. Got it. All right. I like that. Nice little balance and very honest too. I appreciate that. What's one tool or technology other than your phone or computer that you can't live without? Hardware, software, anywhere in between.
Currently,
Yes.
it's probably my Whoop.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you another question. I usually leave the lightning round where it is, but I'm considering a Whoop. I just read a book, which I highly recommend, by the way. I'm going to give a plug to a book called Good Energy. Okay, my wife got me to read this
Okay.
book. It's a great health book. Makes you really think about the foods you eat, the products you use, and how you can just maintain good energy for a long, healthy life. Okay, so and I put this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I created a Claude skill that's based off of all the tactics in it. So whenever we're
Ooh,
thinking about a product we're going to buy or something that I eat on a regular basis, we'll feed it through that. And one of the things they talk about is wearables, and they talk about
yeah.
the Whoop. And so I've considered the Whoop, but tell us why you love the Whoop.
Okay. So this may not be a lightning answer. I was an early adopter of an Apple Watch.
Okay.
I wore an Apple Watch for probably 7 years and maybe more. I don't remember. But when I actually went out on my own, I was finding that it was my phone was just going off all the time. And it is human nature. You can't stop looking at it. I could turn off certain reminders and not others, but you can't have your wrist beeping and not know and not do anything about it. So I stopped wearing it. But I I like measuring my output. There's a number of things. I like having a timer on my wrist, I will tell you. So I really love the Apple Watch. My son got a Whoop and my daughter got an Oura ring.
Right.
And there became and my husband still wears the Apple Watch. So there's a little bit of a contest. Who is going to win me over?
I was going to say, you guys got it all going in the family. All right.
It is a very active competition. And yeah, my son actually got my husband a Whoop for Father's Day and he wore it for 2 days. And I was like, it doesn't tell time. I cannot wear this thing. I actually think that the sleep, and I didn't do the Oura ring because I mentioned I'm a tennis player. And so I can't have a ring on when I'm exercising is really what it comes down to. And if I'm not going to measure my tennis play, then why wear a wearable?
Yep, sure.
I think that the Whoop has probably the lowest form factor, but the best sleep data.
That's huge.
And right now, that is my focus. As we all age and we want to age well, right? I think this is not about how am I going to hit a PR like every other day or maybe every month or something like that, but it's how can I live well? I know that I don't sleep enough, and so that becomes a big piece of it for me. I have also really enjoyed the the recovery and measures. And so I think from a data perspective, because we started out talking about like we all love the data, I find it really, really the most thorough and the best display. Um, that being said, it doesn't stop me from, even though I know like having a glass of wine at 9 p.m. is one of the worst things for sleep, it doesn't stop me from, I wouldn't say it's changed all of my behaviors. So,
Got it. Well, I was on the fence and I was considering all the products that you mentioned, but I think I was leaning toward the Whoop to begin with, and I think you just sold me. So I like it.
well, I'll have to tell my son because he is a
So
very
give him
good.
credit. He gets credit for that Whoop sale. There you go. What's one habit that's had a major impact on your success?
Um, I think I would say, I don't know if it's a habit, but I would say it's my ability to listen.
Okay.
I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania near Scranton, which, from a political spectrum is, center of the world.
Sure.
And I grew up in a very socioeconomically diverse environment. It was former coal country. I went to school with people who are very different than I am, and who came from different families than I do. And so I did. And we all needed to work together, to be together, and to really know each other. And so I credit growing up in a real melting pot to be one of the keys that really got me to listen to people. I also grew up close to my grandparents, and people used to come to visit them like from all over different tracks of life, everything. And we would have these big meals where we would sit at the table and everyone had a story. And so I was the oldest in my generation and I would be the one who would listen. And I think that is a skill or a habit that I come at it really with curiosity. And I've also seen where it really is that unlock to forming productive relationships and honest relationships.
Very cool. Very cool. Well said. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
As like a quintessential first child, I would say fail forward, say yes. I am still learning that. And I'm also still learning to give myself grace. So I would put all of those things on the list.
Well said. All right. That's great. Thank you, Rachel. And then if our listeners want to connect with you, learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
It's hard to hide in today's world.
Sure.
And so I would say first, LinkedIn is where I share a lot of my ideas, my frameworks, my observations. That's how you and I connected. So RL Wexler is my handle, and or you can easily find me. And I do post a couple times a week. My website is Rachel RACHEL Wexler, WEX as in X-ray, LER.com. And I think those two places probably give you enough to learn a little bit about me. You can connect with me on both of those sites. And certainly always looking to connect with people who are thinking about these topics and really driving towards change for the better.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights today. I really enjoyed the discussion.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
You bet. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter, our YouTube channel, and the podcast all for free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, don't forget to prioritize your version of a rich life.